The Big Ten Conference released their all Big Ten preseason team. 10 players, 0 Illini. What? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Illini. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Simple reminder, you can find us on your favorite audio platform. You can find us here on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Sunny Verma. You can find me at IlliniCast. You can find me at the Sunny V. And you can find me on all social medias. Just do a quick search for Locked On Illini. If you'd like to support this show, go ahead and hit that like button. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's a simple little click for you, but trust me, it helps out this show immensely. We're going to have an interesting discussion today. The Big Ten Conference released their all Big Ten preseason team. 10 players and not a single Illini mentioned. And some people were surprised. And I was at first too, but the more I think about it, the less surprised I am. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. So most of you know the Big Ten Media Days start next week. On Wednesday, I believe it's going to be the women's basketball, and on Thursday is going to be the men's basketball. And so with that, we start hearing about all the different sort of preseason accolades and preseason awards. And today, 2 of them were announced, and that being the preseason All Big Ten team and preseason player of the year. Player of the year, I don't think is too surprising. It's Braden Smith. Braden Smith also happened to be the only guy who was unanimous on the All Big Ten team, so that's not too much of a surprise. But when you take a look at the 10 guys listed on the Big Ten team, there's no Illini. There's no Kasparis. There's no Kylan Boswell. There's no Ben Humrickhouse. And I'm curious, and I want to know in the chat, are you guys surprised by this, that there's no Illini? It seems like we're at a point in our development as a program that every year we know that there's one guy that's going to be in that conversation. And so maybe this is just one of those years where, do we have one? And when I look at this list, I can kind of understand why there's no Illinois players on it. For the most part, outside Dylan Harper, there's no freshmen on this Big Ten list. Now, I'll go over the list. We'll have Braden Smith from Purdue, Ballo from Indiana, Peyton Samford from Iowa, Dawson Garcia from Minnesota, Barnheiser from Northwestern, Thornton from Ohio State, Shellstead from Oregon, Ace Baldwin from Penn State, Dylan Harper from Rutgers, and Osber from Washington. All guys who have established themselves somewhat as college basketball players at this point. If you had to wager an ungodly amount of money on who the best player on Illinois was going to be next year, how confident would you be that you would nail the right one? In previous years, it wasn't too hard to figure out. Terrence Shannon Jr., Kofi Kingston, Ayo. It was never really that hard. This year, we may all have assumptions, but I believe this year comes with more question marks and mystery than we have in a very long time. The 2 guys that we have returning from last year's team, the guys who we know who they are, Ty Rogers and Dre Gibbs-Longhorn, they're not really alpha, super time, like scorers, all Big Ten type of players. So you're not going to name those 2. So if the media or the coaches had to pick someone on this team, it would be a guy who they've never seen in an Illinois uniform before. When you talk about Kasparis, again, a guy who's been coming up more often than anyone else when you talk about who people are excited about. And Jay here mentions, not surprising at all with no Illinois on preseason team. None of them have played here, and a lot are basically freshmen. Exactly. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make here. Kaspris is a freshman. Dylan Harper's the only freshman on this list. That includes Ace Baldwin's not on the list. Ace Baldwin was also a top 3 player in this class. Kylan Boswell is the name that I thought might make it if it wasn't Kasparis, just because he is somewhat of a known household name in college basketball world right now. Obviously playing the couple years at Arizona. But, I mean, I think it's reasonable to think that he needs to prove it here first, right? Like, we have high aspirations for him. And I talked about him yesterday on yesterday's episode. The fact that Brad Underwood is sending him to Chicago for the media days shows that Illinois is going to be relying on him a lot. But there's a lot of good names on this list. The Big Ten Conference has brought in 4 new teams, and there's a lot of talent in the conference now. And so I guess I can't say I'm too shocked. This is a list that's, again, just preseason. Once play starts, once we see what this team looks like, because even those of us who are fans, who follow all the message boards, who know all the rumors, who watch whether it's Locked On Illini or keep up at 24/7 or Armchair Illini, whatever Illinois content. If you're an Illinois content consumer, we don't really know what this team is going to look like. We have ideas. We caught a glimpse of it last year with the offense that we ran, but we're replacing that whole team. So I guess we are just as much in the dark as some of the media members are. We're putting this list together. And so that's why when someone asks me, no Illini players, down year, could this be a down year? Could this be a down year? Absolutely. There's high volatility coming into this season. I think we can all recognize that, not just with the huge roster turnover that we have replacing 10 guys on the team, but with the coaching change that we had just a couple weeks before practices start. Is that going to cause some sort of culture, malpractice? Who knows? But I trust Brad Underwood at this point. This is one of those where I understand that there's a lot going on. And I can't say matter-of-factly that I know this team's going to be a top 15 team or a top 20 team like maybe I could have said in years past. But those of you who know, who are my everydayers here at Locked On Illini, know that I think very highly of the players that we've brought in. Especially, and by the way, now that basketball season is getting closer, I will be doing player-by-player analysis on what their roles should be on this team and their outlook. I'll be bringing on Joe Jackson, who, if you don't know who he is, find the Feed the Post channel on YouTube. He does such a fantastic job. I learn so much every time I watch his channel. So we'll be going one player by player. But I really like the pieces that Brad Underwood has brought in. And more often than not, he's brought this program to levels that ascended my expectations rather than disappointed. Now, do I have expectations for Elite 8 this year? No, I don't. I don't think the team as is as good as the team last year. But I've mentioned this before. I think the talent level actually is higher. I think this team, if one or two things go our way, could be a national championship contender next season in 2025. But this year, just because that we don't have any preseason mentions when it comes to player of the year or all Big Ten team, that doesn't mean that we need to be concerned about anything at this point. If anything else, there's so much depth on this team. It's almost a compliment. We have 8 or 9 guys who I think could all start. I've talked about this. Like, you can name 6 or 7 different starting lineups, and I'd be like, I can see that. We don't know who's going to be playing those major minutes right now. We have ideas, but we don't know who. And because we don't know who, I mean, the media doesn't know who. And so if the media doesn't know who, then it's hard for them to really say one way or the other that this guy is the one who deserves to, he's going to be their best player. Because I think if people knew who the best player on this team was going to be, he would be a rather easy selection. You figure Illinois is going to be a top 3, maybe top 4, worst case top 6 team in the conference. And with Illinois comes eyeballs. We're a very popular team. And so we tend to have some sort of presence when it comes to the postseason awards. But right now, as is, the team, it hasn't been on the court yet, at least not on TV. We've seen practice. We've seen clips on the social media team. But practices started on Monday. The secret scrimmages are starting in about a week. We're going to start hearing tidbits then. Preseason games. The relatively easy non-conference games will start. And that's when we'll start getting ideas of who's going to be playing what roles. Who are the alphas on this team? And at that point, it's going to be less guesses and just us seeing on the court. College football season is well underway, and if you're looking to make your favorite team's home game, please check out the Game Time app. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through the thousands of tickets. Please customize your spot. Use all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And, of course, the lowest price guarantee. Or else the Game Time app will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, it's Wednesday, and on Wednesdays, at least for the last 4 or 5 weeks, I've released positional grade for the previous game. This one, I'm going to be full disclosure out there. I never received the all 22 for this game. I feel like I should probably be grateful. This is a game I just had to kind of rewatch on YouTube TV. So I don't know if it's as thorough as the previous ones are going to be, but just because this is a kind of an expectation, I know some of you guys like it. I figured I'd at least try to do my best based on the TV angles that we did get. As per usual, I'm going to start with the coaching staff. Barry Lundy Jr., I think a lot of you are pretty down on for this game. Our offensive game plan was very conservative. Frustrated a lot of you. It didn't seem like after that first drive, which was masterfully done, that we really made any sort of progress. And when we made progress, we just had costly penalties. And penalties seem to be a theme that I'm going to be talking about for the next few minutes when it comes to a lot of these positions. But I'm very confused right now. I genuinely think that Barry Lundy Jr. is a talented offensive coordinator who, against these more elite teams, I think Brett and him understand that they're outmanned. And so the idea is to not create turnovers, especially with how poorly our offensive line, and trust me, wait till I get to the offensive line grade later. I think we're trying to play as conservative as possible and try to take advantage of takeaways. Try to, if the ball breaks our way and we get a turnover, a pick six here and there, just try not to make mistakes. Now, that doesn't mean that this is very aesthetically pleasing. That doesn't mean that this isn't frustrating. But I know a lot of you want to give Barry Lundy Jr. probably a D or a C, and that's probably what I'll do. I'll give him a C plus. Again, the first drive was masterfully done, but honestly, from that point on, there was very little that I saw. Aaron Henry Jr. This was his revenge game against Andy Kotelnicki, and I think he played fantastic, or he coached fantastic. Giving up 14 points with only 2 minutes left in the game. Ultimately it was 21, but the game was kind of forced on Illinois' end, where they had to be super aggressive with Luke Altmaier, and Penn State's defense, who have one of the best pass rushes in the country, were able to zero in on Luke, and they got a cheap touchdown at the end of the game. I don't think Aaron Henry has much to be ashamed about, at least scheme-wise, coach-wise. The running backs, once again, ate us up, but I think this is more of a talent issue at certain positions. There's no point at this game, in watching this game, where I was like, I don't think our defensive coordinator knows what he's doing. Whereas when I watched last year's team, I felt that almost every single game. Man, Aaron looks outmatched. What's he doing? He's getting outplayed here. I don't necessarily think that was the case on Saturday night. Aaron Henry, I'll give a B to. And trust me, a B is probably the highest grade I'm going to give out of all these positional grades. Luke Altmaier threw his first interception of the year on Saturday. A play where he simply must just not have seen A.J. Harris. I'm not sure how, because otherwise, clear as day, the easiest interception that A.J. Harris, who is their top defensive back, is going to get all year long. Luke made some throws, and some of the throws that connected, again, were brought back because of penalties. But this very much reminded me of one of last year's games, in the sense where he was running for his life. I talked about this when you took a look at the PFF grades. Luke Altmaier, when he has a clean pocket, was the second best quarterback in all of college football. Well, he very rarely had a clean pocket against Penn State. He was running for his life, trying to get first downs. He was sacked, I believe, 7 times on Saturday night. I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me. But the difference is from last year is Luke didn't really panic. There was no sense of him being outmatched or just being intimidated by the moment. Every time he got down, he got right back up. And again, that's the difference I've talked about before all season long. He's got a new sense of confidence that he didn't have last year. And so that's nice to see. Luke Altmaier, I'm going to give a B- to, because again, the numbers themselves aren't great. I don't want to go any lower than that, because I think a lot of his abilities were impacted by that very poor offensive line in front of him. Speaking of offensive line, I mean, this was bad. Now, granted, Penn State's defense is a very good one, but outside that second half against Nebraska a week and a half ago now, that interior of the offensive line, they need to figure some stuff out. And I'll be talking about this in a segment coming up about what needs to be the number one priority for the coaching staff to work on over this bye week. And it's got to be the offensive line. I don't know if it's coaching or we just need to move guys around. We may need to make a move at guard. I don't think we can really do much at the center position, but some shuffling needs to be done. That's what happened last year, if keep in mind. Our first 3-4 games, we struggled with that offensive line. So then we had to move a couple of guys around into different places. And guess what? It worked. Now, luckily, our next game is against Purdue. And Purdue doesn't seem to be very good. So it'll be a good game to be able to kind of experiment a little bit. Because, of course, we have Michigan right after that. The offensive line, now granted, they went up against a very, very good defense. So I'm not going to... No, I'm going to give them probably the lowest grade I've given anybody this year, and that's going to be a D. I hate to say it, but I would be kidding myself if I gave a grade any higher than that. Tight end. We got another touchdown. We could have had a second touchdown, but there was a penalty by another wide receiver. I think it was Dixon who wiped out a potential second touchdown. Blocking seemed okay. There's nothing that jumped out at me about the tight ends. Again, this was not on all 22 I was watching. This is usually I'm watching all 22s on Sunday nights, and so I've got notes and whatnot. I do have notes, but it's just from the TV broadcast, which I was able to rewatch. I'll give a B- too. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary blocking wise. We caught a touchdown, and usually that's kind of what the barometer is for me when it comes to these tight ends after we lost Cole Rusk. Just pretend like you're a threat catching the ball, and Carson Goda was. And so that was nice to see. Tanner Arkin, same. Yeah, so okay. After that, we're going to go. Let's just switch to wide receivers. Wide receivers. Zachary Franklin, not a big game. Pat Bryant, nowhere to be seen. I think Penn State's defense basically zeroed in on Pat Bryant. I believe he had 2 catches for about 33 yards. Just didn't get much done. I think the idea was, take Pat out, let Zachary get these little, 10-yard catches that he's accustomed to, but he wasn't even getting those because Luke just didn't have time to find him. Luke was on the ground so often. So they played okay. Normally I'd give them a B, but I'm going to bump them down to a B- just because of some of the just stupid penalties that the wide receivers made, whether it's false start or just bringing back plays which otherwise would have gone for 15 yards with just mindless stuff that you can't do against a team like Penn State. After this, we'll switch over to the defensive side. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, defensive line. I'm surprised I keep having to say this in year 4 for Brett Bielema, but it's shocking to me that it's the skill players that are contending with teams like Penn State, and it's the lines, it's the trenches that we seem to be overpowered on. And it was no difference against Penn State. They're just now granted. Penn State has a fantastic offensive line. I think Brett Bielema literally said during the press post game that this was the best offensive line that we're going to be playing all year long. But they acted like it. We got very little pressure. Drew Aller, who, again, is a very good quarterback. He's not an elite quarterback, but he had all the time in the world. And for a quarterback of his caliber, when you give him that time, he's going to make the right pass. And he did. Defensive line, I'll give a C. Nothing jumped out at you. There was very little impact. I couldn't even tell you who had the best game on the defensive line. Again, I wasn't able to watch the all-22s to really get a good eye on it, but just very disappointing performance overall. Linebackers, we're at the same. Like literally, it's these running backs who are running circles around our guys. I don't know what the average yards per carry for Penn State's running backs were, but almost every time they handed it off, they were able to get 8-10 yards, it seems like. If I gave the offensive line a D-, I'm going to give the linebackers a D-. This is clearly, in my opinion, the worst group that we have on the team. Dylan Rosiak is a good linebacker, but he shouldn't be your best linebacker. He should be your third best linebacker. This is just a positional group where we're going to have to upgrade. And we're not going to be able to do it this season, but next year, it's got to be one of the main focuses in the transfer portal because, again, they're good, but nobody on that side is very good or great. And if this defense is to play the way that it's been playing with the secondary balling out, right now there's a clear weakness to this team, and everyone knows it now. Penn State showed it in the second half. Just run at them, run at them, run at them. And that's because the linebackers just aren't getting the job done. D-. Next, we'll go to secondary. We're going to... There's not many plays out there that I remember where, outside the Terrence Brooks pass interference, that we got outclassed. Penn State has good wide receivers, but Drew Aller, for the most part, didn't really... They know the game plan now, right? It's happened almost every single game. Xavier Scott, a takeaway here. It happened against Nebraska, Torrey Cox Jr. When you take risks against Illinois, that's what we want. We want you to risk because the way our defensive backs play, we're all over the wide receiver. And they're ball hawks. They're able to take the ball away from a wide receiver even on a 50-50 ball. Penn State knew that. And so they didn't really challenge them. And for that reason, the defensive backs will probably get the highest grade of a B. And again, I don't want to... It wasn't A material. I don't think anyone on this team deserves an A for their performance. But I think the defensive backs were probably the best unit that we had playing. And yeah, I mean, overall, again, the grades-wise, not that great. But when I just went over all these grades, right? And please let me know in the comments which ones you agree with, which ones you disagree with. But for a team that played this poorly, I don't think it's arguable that this was the poorest game that we've played. Now, granted, this is against the best team that we've played, a team that we're clearly outclassed against when it comes to talent. We were down 14-7 with 2 minutes left. I'm not down about this game. I've recognized that we have things to work on, but I'm not down on the Illini. And I don't think you should be either. Hopefully, this is going to be the worst performance we have this season. I think the bye week is coming at the perfect time. 4-1. We're going to have Purdue right afterwards. Purdue is a team who, for some reason, we can't beat at home. But Purdue might be the worst team in the P2 or P4 even. And so that is a get-right game. And we need to be able to find out what gets right because we have Michigan after that. And then Oregon after that. 2 games that we're going to be pretty big underdogs in. Well, maybe not the Michigan game. Actually, Washington all of a sudden is a favorite over Michigan this upcoming weekend. So who knows? We might be the favorite for that game. But regardless, it's going to be a tough one. But once we're done with Michigan, once we're done with Oregon, the schedule eases up a little bit. And that's when you really want to be able to know what your team is and really just settle down and play the type of ball that your team is capable of playing. So, again, hopefully this is the worst positional grades I'm going to be giving all season long. But keep your head up. We took a team, the 9th best team in the country, on a Saturday night in one of the most intimidating atmospheres in college football. And we were right there with them, playing our worst game. Things are looking up for Illini fans. Just make sure you keep it here at Locked On Illini. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Again, I know I keep asking it, but it's because it's true. This is one of the fastest growing channels on the Locked On network. And trust me when I say I've had phone calls with the company, and they're astounded by the support that you've given me, especially since this channel started during the off season. I think we're close to 1,300 subs right now. So if you're watching this and you watch this every day, but take a look to see if you're subscribed, because now the way YouTube works sometimes, If you watch a video once or twice, they'll still send it in your algorithm, even if you're not subscribed. But trust me, on my end, it helps a lot. So hit that like button, hit the notification button. Especially lately, I've been going live. I've just kind of enjoyed it. I think some of you enjoy it. I think you guys are going to really enjoy Thursday's episode. I'm going to bring up the topic now. I'm going to be posting about it on social media. I have a question for you guys. Does Illinois have the best head coach combo between men's football and men's basketball in the entire Big Ten? That's going to be the topic on Thursday. I hope you guys join me. I think it's going to be a fun one. I'm going to be debating that with Kent, who I believe is going to be unveiling his new Luke Altmaier jersey for the bet he lost. So join me for that. And until then, ILL, love you guys.